Superintendent of the Pioneer Schools, John Gummel. Good to see you, John. Thanks for coming in.
Well, it's good to be here. I'm glad I'm here safe.
I'm glad you made it in, as it's tough when you go and check the roads in the Pioneer School District to make the determinations, either you or one of your staffs who are able to get onto the different roadways. What time does that start? They head out pretty early in the morning.
Yeah, they do. Our transportation director, Holly, she does a phenomenal job. She gets out there early. She says 3:30, but I would say 3:45.
You think it's about 3:45?
Yeah.
And
no, she gets out there early.
I mean, you got to have a pretty stable rig yourself to be able to go all around the district. So that's pretty.
Right.
That's pretty good to be able to do that.
Yeah. So then I usually go out about 5 and just do a drive of the Harsting Island, Pickering Road, just to kind of. So that's kind of my responsibility.
That's your
and I
area.
report to her, and so then from that information we make a determination on what we're going to do for the day.
And of course, it is the weather is very subjective.
Yes,
you
it
think
is.
maybe one day it'll be. You're leading into the next day, you're thinking this is going to happen, something changes, and the safety for not only the students but the faculty and staff is paramount when it comes to these things.
Absolutely, it is, and so we're trying to prioritize education and having kids go to school, but also prioritize safety.
Yeah.
So it's a fine balance, and it's not a perfect science. Excuse me. Yesterday, the day before, when we had the snowstorm in the afternoon, and
You just don't know.
you just don't know. Yeah. So that was dicey.
It's
but,
good to make sure that everybody is safe. We've been talking a lot about the replacement levies all across the county and the South Sound. Many schools are running this replacement levy in the upcoming elections here in the next month or so. And it's always important to kind of explain why this is needed for each individual district. I will say, as you go through this, as we've talked with North Mason and Shelton and now Pioneer, and if any other schools would like to come in and explain this as well, the replacement levy cost per thousand is not a set amount across the board. In each district, it's a different amount, which is kind of looked upon and agreed upon through the board and different aspects with that. So when you hear, for example, what the Pioneer rate per 1,000 is, and then you hear the Shelton or North Mason rate per 1,000, they are differing numbers, but they've all been kind of come up with by a working group of people.
Correct. That's 100% correct. So where we're charging, and we say approximate all the time because it's based on our land value. Yeah. And so as those rise or fall, it determines how much they're going to be paying per thousand. So when we look at it, our levy pays for about little over 20% of our budget, which is it's a big part of it. But it also supports a lot of the programs that the state doesn't fund. Yeah. And so when I talk about values, I always talk about when I talk about levies, I always talk about what's our values and what do we think is important. So, for instance, the state pays approximately for every 600 kids you have a counselor, approximately. So we have 750 students, and so that leaves to about 1.2 students or 1.2 counselors that they pay. So who pays that other 0.8 of a counselor for two full-time counselors? That's a value thing. We think it's important to have a counselor in every school. And so that 0.8 comes up from the levy dollars. We pay for it out of levy. And so it's those programs that we feel are important for our students to be successful, and not only at school but after school, when they leave our walls of Pioneer. We're looking for them to be successful at that. And so we develop our systems and our programs so that we are addressing the whole child. So
one of the things that we have also talked about with other school districts, like you were saying, it's for counselors. One thing I noticed yesterday when I was talking with some folks from Shelton, it was for their pool, their auditorium, which is open to use, about it's open to the public, so it's even open spaces when people need to gather for
Absolutely.
meetings and things like that.
You're talking maintenance and operations,
maintenance
and the
operations.
structural fidelity of our schools.
One of the things that we also were discussing was the fact, and you mentioned it too, that the state mandates certain things but does not fund those certain things, and that's where these come in. And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation for the legislature.
How much time do we have?
I know, right? So this is something that, as I look at your fact sheet here, we've got information going back to 2014, and I'm sure it's way even before all of that. The schools have all become accustomed to this, not to say that they're just saying, okay, well, it's time for another year, vote yes again. You do have to put in the due diligence. You do have to make aware the voters what's going on. But it has been a stable source of 20% of your income for a very long time.
Yes.
And to see that potentially not be there as you work for the next budgets can be quite impactful.
Well, it is. It's scary. Thinking about the impact for not passing it. There's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of programs that we wouldn't be able to fund.
Yeah.
And we talk about counseling services, smaller class sizes, and mental health. Facilities, technology, those are all things that come out of the levy, and if funding for that decreases, then we have to reevaluate how are we going to stay within the budget, and that's a tough conversation.
Yeah.
What's the backup plan? Worst case, I'm not expecting it not to, but how does a school district prepare for this if it seems like there's momentum that people vote for this and it's a replacement, so they're used to this not being a new tax but a replacement from the year before, but it's funded through the end of this year, right? This would be for 2021.
Correct.
Are there any secondary chances, or what happens, let's say worst case scenario, it doesn't pass? What can the school district do to avert the kind of disaster of having to let go people, stop programs, and things that people are used to having?
So well, first of all, the state allows us to have 2 levies a year for the same purpose. So if ours doesn't get the 50% plus 1, which I believe it will, but if we don't, then we're going to be running it again in April. And then, at that point, if it doesn't pass in April, then we start looking at our budget and where do we make up that $2.6 million.
Yeah.
One of the things you have on your fact sheet here, which I have not seen on other ones, is a section on tax exemptions, which I find fascinating. A lot of folks who may be looking at this and going, well, my home values went up, and so I may be ending up paying more. I don't have any kids in the district. I'm not doing this, whatever. It is interesting that you note in here that seniors and disabled citizens may qualify for tax exemptions from levy property taxes by calling the county assessor's office. And again, that's where these you may see a change in how much you would pay as home prices have gone up. But this is something that the assessor's office does that folks are able to talk with that. Do you know of a number or percentage of seniors or disabled citizens in Pioneer?
Yeah. So we actually do have a number of citizens or taxpayers in our district that do qualify for this, and they do exercise that right. It is not a large percentage. It is a small percentage, and the county assessors, they allow us to, if for instance, if you are getting tax exempt, so that means there's lost taxes there. So they ask us, I think every year, do we want to go after tax the other people who are paying taxes to make up for that? And we always say no. We're not going to do that. We'll survive with
make
what we
do
have.
with what you got.
So it's an interesting as property taxes, and this is a tough concept for some people, as property taxes do increase, the school taxes actually go down, because we're asking for $2.6 million. We're not asking for $1.70 per thousand.
I see.
So as that $1,000 becomes more valuable, that $1.70, if we kept it at $1.70, it would grow more, and so then hence we would have more than $2.6 million. So Does that make sense?
That does make sense to me, and that is something else that I don't believe any of the others have brought up. It's not like you're trying to get as much as you can based on that $1,000 per assessed value. You've determined that your level funding would be, what did you say, 2.6?
Yeah, we're asking for $2.6 million.
And that's it. Once you get to that, and so everybody else is able to, and that's why you see on your fact sheet the kind of the waves.
Yes,
on that.
Correct. And it's based off the property value, how they assess it.
Well, I know a lot of folks really do enjoy seeing their property values go up, but with that, of course, there are some trickle-down things that are associated with that. So the election for Pioneer is February 11th, and your votes are encouraged to be in by 8 o'clock, and there's always more information as well on psd402.org, Facebook, and as well as upcoming meetings and stuff. You're always willing to meet with folks in the district?
Absolutely. I get probably a phone call a day from a citizen asking, tell me a little bit more about this levy. So please call the district office. I'll be glad to talk to anybody.
And then at the end of that conversation, they come away with a clarity?
Hopefully, yeah. That's the game.
That's good answer. Good answer there.
John, good quiz at the end.
John, good to see you, and thanks for making it in today.
Well, thank you for this time,
and
thanks for our voters for always supporting schools.
For sure.